这现在本身是个大品牌。
It's too hard.
Yeah, too hard. Yes. Communication too difficult with Chinese. Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yeah, very difficult.
I am the director of the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office, and it is actually our pleasure to work together with the World Development Foundation, which is really responsible for putting on this program today. So please accept my welcome to all of you. I think we're going to have a very exciting discussion this morning. The person who really deserves the credit for putting all of this together is Patrick Shirata, and he will speak next and introduce our speakers.
Great, thank you, Bruce. And hello everyone. In the theater I could probably project at this, but this program today, this workshop, was kind of at my instigation because Bruce was the moderator for a program earlier in May of 2017 that was produced by Dr. Guo and the World Development Foundation. President, Ambassador Henry McDonald next to me, and I am the program director, and put the program together at that time in order to discuss the need or my own desire to see public and private come together to make the policies of the United Nations actualized, if you will. It's very difficult to come up with the great policies that the UN and the NGO leadership at the United Nations come up with the staff, the diplomats, and civil society here. And it's great that civil society like yourself is all here, essentially to say this might be right or wrong or kumbaya, but nothing really becomes actualized, I think, without the ability of all stakeholders, including the private sector, to be ethically and morally, but completely involved with us in SDG success. I'm going to have to leave early and take Ambassador with me. We unfortunately, because of the conference, everything is scheduled on top of each other, and we will be speaking at the Youth Hub at about 12:45. We go until 1. So it's just overlapping a little bit at the end. However, we have all already made our work and hearts and minds clear with some of the support of Dr. Guo and the WDF, with the leadership of Bruce, with ambassadors like Ambassador McDonald here, and then also work in the private sector with Dan Bena and leadership among youth with Idiola Pashalari, and I'll invite them all to speak in a moment. But I wanted to ask you to take an active role. Number one, because this is a workshop. This isn't our PPP conference, where we sat up and provided a lot of information and had a little Q&A in the end. So number one, we want this to be a discussion. There may be people among you who think that public-private partnerships should not be promoted for whatever reason, and then there might be some who think that they are good, and then still others who don't understand them at all and need a real understanding. I would like it to be a discussion, that number one, and number two, that gives me an opportunity not to feel guilty for leaving early. Okay, so those are the two reasons. For myself, before I introduce others, I really had a long history of working with the idea of partnership between the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector, investors, private sector, for a greater good. I started with a theater company that is still around now, and an associate of DPI called the Bond Street Theater. We learned technical skills, even juggling, magic, unicycling, Afro-Caribbean stilts, so that we could work in ways to be paid at parties, bar mitzvahs, weddings, and have that be the production money for our rather socio-political theater, without having to worry if we were offending some donor like AT&T or, you know, PepsiCo or someone. So it started that way for me, and then I ran a program called InterArts, where I received the MacArthur Award for recreating the home of America's first arts colony. And that would not have been possible without the former Governor Cuomo, the elder Governor Cuomo, and I working together with a number of large business concerns upstate New York to recreate the home of America's first arts colony. From there, I moved on to Hunter College, where I wanted to renovate the Hunter College Playhouse and raise $7.5 million to create the Danny Kaye Playhouse. And that was another consortium of public and private concerns working together. And so from there, you know, life moved on. We have a number of other opportunities, but currently I have a small foundation called the Vinculum Foundation. The vinculum is a line and a fraction between the numerator and the denominator. No one knows what that line is called, but the vinculum is a line that combines the numerator and the denominator. And I wanted this foundation to combine donors, large ethical donors, with projects at the United Nations run by NGOs. And that is more of a reactive foundation that we must wait for either an NGO or a donor to come. And the fact that we are working so closely with the World Development Foundation, it's enabled me to work with an organization that really understands and appreciates public-private partnership, and that's where I am today as program director, and very proud to be a part of WDF because of what it stands for. So with that in mind, I would like to then introduce our panel and ask perhaps our moderator to begin. So let me go around the room and say that my good friend, longtime friend, Idiola Pasholare, who is with us, is with the World Assembly of Youth. And Idiola, who is Albanian, is lodged in Malaysia. I was there last summer speaking at her annual conference. She had another one this year. She's one of the most active youth leaders, honestly, that I know working in the world. And she's representing youth who aren't often represented here by their leaders, and that is Asian youth. Many Asian youth come here, but not leaders in that area. And she represents over 140 countries. And the national youth councils in each of those countries. So it's a very broad-reaching, far-reaching organization that Idiola represents. And I'm kind of interested to see what youth think about the idea of public-private partnership. Is that embraced or is that shunned? Dan Benna, a close friend and neighbor in Westchester for many years, has been very active at ensuring that Ms. Indra Nuri, who just retired from PepsiCo, and the entire PepsiCo team stay aimed in the proper direction. He's the author of the book Sustainability and has worked in water rights and sustainability during his long tenure at Pepsi. He has now recently retired, so he's free to speak, but he has always spoken his mind very well and clearly on the topic. And any of you who are long-term friends of UNDPI know that he opened the plenary discussion in 2011 in Bonn, Germany, when we had the DPI conference in Bonn. And so I think that his perspective at PepsiCo, his knowledge of UN and NGO activities in particular, and now the transition that he's found himself in probably offers us a great opportunity to hear his perspective. For the past year at the permanent mission of Suriname to the United Nations, I was privileged to work as the assistant to Ambassador Henry McDonald. Dr. Henry McDonald, Ambassador, has been stationed at the permanent mission of Suriname for about a decade, but not consistently, because he was here for a long time, went home and was given a vaulted position at home in Paramaribo, in the capital, in the cabinet, and said, "This is boring, send me back to New York." And they sent him back for another stint. And he is loved in the United Nations for many reasons. Certainly as a human rights advocate, he is well placed here at the UN. But much more than that, he has been a champion of the He for She movement that Emma Watson started here at the UN. and gender equality in general. He's done a tremendous amount of work with UN Women, but one of the things I'm most proud of knowing and working with Ambassador McDonald is his barbershop conferences here. These are conferences mainly aimed at men because there are generally many more women in the room. And he said, what do we do at barbershops? We talk about women. At this time, we'll talk about them in the right way. And those barbershop conferences, of course, had women in them and speaking as well, but mostly were aimed at drawing in men from our NGO and staff community. And they were very much appreciated and worked in concert with the Mission of Iceland. Recently, at the end of December, Ambassador decided to retire and join us at World Development Foundation, and we're very proud to have Ambassador McDonald as our president. I have known Bruce Knotts since we worked on this kind of program, the NGO DPI program, ages ago when Bruce was, I think, our treasurer. Much better as a leader than as a treasurer because that's so behind the scenes and kind of dull. And Bruce excels in working together with people, and where many people have an ideological bent one way or the other, one that might preclude a discussion of public-private partnership, certainly Bruce has embraced that as another platform and another constituency to bring under the umbrella of the United Nations through civil society. We have all of us who are in the executive committee have been very proud to work with Bruce, and I see his vice president is here, Tim Quarles, and the rest of the committee in doing the really good work that they do. So I'm very pleased to now turn it over. I'd like to stay for a bit of the discussion before I leave. And just as I'm ready to turn the microphone over, there are many people here who I know have been active in the field, but Jeffrey Huffines just walked in. And Jeff, if you stay for a little while, it would be great to sort of get your perspective as well. And I know that one or two other people, especially one or two of Dr. Guo's associates from China, would like to make a small intervention as well. But now I'm finally done speaking, and after everyone else is, please stick around to have a conversation about the topic. Bruce, may I turn the mic over to you? Thank you.
Yeah, it is heavy. We do have a few chairs around. If you have a bag on a chair, you might want to take the bag off the chair so somebody can sit in that chair. I hate to see people standing up in the back. I've got an overflow crowd, so that's really great. So I know that Ambassador McDonald also has someplace to go, so I want to turn the mic over to him very quickly. I do want to mention that I too have been working very closely with the World Development Foundation, and I very much believe in the idea of public-private partnerships. You know, there is sometimes a demonization of corporations, and I think that's mostly ill-placed. I think there may be predatory corporations, but I think by and large, corporations are in advance of social justice causes of governments. There are many places where corporations have promoted minority groups into higher positions of authority long before governments do that. And so I see corporations as an ally in social justice causes, and I think if we treat corporations in that fashion, they will be allies. So I think I don't like the confrontational attitude that some activists have towards corporations. I think when we build bridges and we build cooperative relationships, it's good, it's a win-win for everybody. So with that, I'll turn it over to my very dear friend, Ambassador McDonald, who is a real leader here at the UN. Patrick has done a much better introduction of the ambassador than I have, that I am able to do, so I will just turn the microphone over.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Greetings to everyone in the room, all of my friends, Patrick, people from the World Development Foundation, I met you yesterday. Then, greetings to everyone. I'm going to keep it really short. I have a rather long prepared speech, but I will take only a small part in it. That is the crux of the matter, and and then I will take my time to listen to the other speakers. I've seen the presentation of them, which is very interesting, and sent it to me yesterday. So I want to be here and then speaking, of course. Over the past 2 decades, more than 1,400 public-private partnerships deals were signed in the European Union, which represent an estimate of capital value of approximately 260 billion euros. However, since the onset of the financial and economic crisis, estimates suggest that the number of PPP deals have fallen with 30%. These difficulties have placed significant strains on governments that have come to rely on PPPs as an important means for the delivery of long-term infrastructure assets and related services. Governments in many developing countries simply don't have enough financial resources nor the technical expertise to facilitate the development process or even the sustainable development goals. They don't have enough resources to do those sufficiently. That's the main reason why the last Sustainable Development Goal, number 17, was introduced, discussed, and formulated. The crafters of the Sustainable Development Goals knew from expertise that the full complexity of goals could not only be realized with a strong commitment to global partnership and cooperation. This was the last goal number 8 in the Millennium Development Goals, where they talk about cooperation. Goal 17 of this SDGs is factually a broader understanding of MDG 8, since without the necessary interlinkage of cooperation of governments, civil society, the private sector, and corporations, realization of the Sustainable Development Goals within the time frame set by the global leaders would be almost impossible. While official development assistance, ODA, from developed countries increased by 66% between 2000 and 2014, humanitarian crises brought on by conflict and natural disasters continue to demand more financial resources and aid. Consequently, many countries also require, besides ODA, partnerships with the private and business sectors to promote growth and trade. Today's world is more interconnected than ever before, and this should be encouraged. Improving access to technology and knowledge is an important way to share ideas and foster innovation. Coordinating policies to help developing countries manage their debt, as well as promoting investment for the least developed, is vital to achieve sustainable growth and development. The goals aim to enhance North-South, South-South, and triangular cooperations by supporting national plans to achieve all targets. Since we are aware of the many benefits, I think some of us are aware of the benefits. If you are not aware, listen to that later. I will not focus on them today, but use the rest of my time to focus on the serious disadvantages and challenges of PPP and how to tackle those. The main and most serious drawbacks of PPPs are: many corporations, they facilitate bribes and reduction to attract contracts. That's the first thing that people will tell you. They will come in with corruption and stuff like that. Corporate social responsibility is not yet fully developed. Consequently, often corporations do not take these responsibilities serious in mostly developing countries. And I have a story to tell about a multinational that left Suriname 3 years ago, and how things has been going. It was just terrible what happened. Often private investors obtain a return that is higher than the government bond rate, even though most or all of the income is associated with the project or investment must be borne by the government. Another problem: if the expertise in the partnership lies heavily on the private side, the government is at an inherent disadvantage. For example, it might be unable to accurately assess the proposed costs. You're seeing this thing is happening right now with the big oil findings in Guyana. where in fact all of the information is only with Exxon, and the government is running behind. When there are, another problem, when there are only limited numbers of private entities that can perform the required tasks, the limited number of private participants that are big enough to take these tasks might limit the competitiveness required for cost-effective partnering. Every public-private partnership involves risk for the private participant, which reasonably expects to be compensated for accepting those risks. This can increase government costs, of course. And lastly, when there are only a limited number of private entities that can perform the required tasks, the limited number of private participants that are big enough to take these tasks might limit the competitiveness required for cost-effective partnering. Those are a few remarks I want to make right now, and I'll hand it back over to the chairperson, who might lead us further.
I'll do my best. Well, let's hear next from Idiola. Idiola and I have been really good friends. We've done a lot of work here together at the United Nations, but we're almost daily on social media together, and we're liking each other's photos, and so I feel like we're in communication almost every day, so I'm looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. The World Assembly of Youth, it's a coordinated body of national councils, like Patrick mentioned earlier on, and given that our main objective is creation of policies on youth-related issues, we do require, and in a way we do provide recommendation for all the stakeholders, but including private and public as well. So in order for each policy to be implemented or carried out forward, it is required that this partnership exists. So that's why I say that on behalf of the organization that I represent and also young people, in order for the policies to be implemented and come forward, it is important that this partnership exists. Given in many cases, like for example, let me tell you, at this organization there are 21 youth issues that we tackle. Just to voice out: youth and education, employment, armed conflict, gender equality, drug abuse, environment, intergenerational relation, democracy, disability, globalization, health, HIV/AIDS, human development, human rights, ICT, juvenile delinquency, leadership training, leisure time activities, population, hunger and poverty, and the most important, participation in decision-making process. So in order for all these issues to be tackled, or policies to be created, or youth policies for that matter, it is required that all the stakeholders work together. But we all know that when it comes to recommending in an outcome document, public sector and private sector do take a bunch or a huge place on that. That's why it's important not only to just request to them directly, but how can intertwine both of them together? How can I put both of those stakeholders in the table for the betterment of the young people? Because we like it or not, when this organization was founded in 1948, it was just about peace and human rights and democracy. But like I mentioned, now there are 21 youth issues, and unfortunately with the lifestyle, a lot of them has been increasing, and they will be increasing. But this partnership will somehow find a solution to address them. That's why I believe that public-private partnership is important, and listening from the ambassador's perspective and all the statistics that you provided, even though from the negative perspective on corruption and whoever controls what in certain countries, public sector makes the decision, in certain countries, private sector makes the decisions when it comes to especially implementation of policies, it is important that they come together at the table and form that partnership. Because if we want to move forward, it is required to come back to goal 17. Partnership is important for all of us. And not just those two stakeholders, like I say, all of them are important. Media is important, NGOs are important as well to be at the part of the table, and also young people for that matter. Not just being told what to do, but also be heard what they have to say. That's why I believe that in order for us to tackle all of these issues or any other matters, because in each country, whether we like it or not, they do exist, even though the statistics are different. It is important to provide that platform on these sort of events for them to come up to an understanding. How can we move forward? What is the commonalities and challenges that they face in each country, and then address them maybe first at the global level and then move down to regional and then national level. I guess I will leave it with that, and then we will move forward. Thank you so much.
Let me make a very quick comment. As you were speaking, Ideal, I was thinking of actually the last session. If you were in the big session this morning, they were talking about companies often have more money, more resources than governments do. And they are multinational companies. Large companies today are across the board. So when we're talking about multilateral engagement, companies are already doing that. That's how they operate. And so often they have insights on working across borders more than the rest of us. And so, and I think there needs to be a really strong communication between governments or among governments, private corporations, and civil society. And I think in that communication, there can be holding each other accountable, setting standards, setting norms that are consistent with what the international community wants, what civil society wants, and what corporations need to make a profit and to exist. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Patrick.
Thanks. This is just a point of information. I didn't want to make a comment here, but I wanted you to know that we would intend to repeat this workshop tomorrow at Long Island University in Brooklyn. Therefore, we'd like you to come to that as well, and I should have said that at the opening. Because what we'd like to do is expand upon this. I mean, this is a way to just get our feet wet, make sure we all understand what it is we're speaking about, and perhaps get some of your views. But we're not going to have enough time to really have the discussion we want, and we're very interested in the discussion at least as much, if not more, than the presentations. So therefore, we would like, I only jumped in now because I didn't mention it before, we'd like you back, and we'd like you taking notes right now, so you could say when we come back tomorrow, how do we expand upon this one issue? And, well, do you have a quick question? I'm sorry,
I have a really quick question to the point. So if we're talking about the fact that like a lot of like multinational corporations have more money than governments and that they should be really introduced to the conversation, if we're also saying that in the future a lot of these key like private industries should be regulated more and held accountable, how is that going to impact their like keenness and the dynamic of PPPs moving forward then?
It's a great question. I just ask that you hold it for the moment because
Okay.
I was only jumping in for a point
Just related to
of
that point,
information and another introduction because that's the question that we want to answer. That's exactly at the heart of what we're discussing. There's a gentleman who I hope is here, at least in spirit, Felix Dodds, who has very strong feelings that are negative, that emanate from that point of view, and he was one of the reasons that we got the idea to have this conversation. I just want to also mention that our good friend Miro Polzer would like to say a few words after the speakers. Ambassador and I may be running at that point from IAAI Glocha. He has a great perspective on this, and I hope it might include something to do with Bitcoin and blockchain as well, because I think that's important to get into the conversation. I also just wanted to mention before Dan started that he's really going to deliver the keynote here, in that he has a very nice PowerPoint that I think will outline for you, that's right behind him, some of the cogent points that he will bring up, and it's a really good PowerPoint. I looked at it last night, and I wanted to step back a second and say, in terms of public-private partnerships, most likely the Youth Assembly at the United Nations, which I created in 2002 and retired from in 2015, wouldn't have been as powerful as it was without public-private partnerships. It was my intention to bring youth together with senior UN officials. Certainly Bruce and others have spoke at it. Miro and others, Jeff, have all spoken at the Youth Assembly when it was here and hot, and we would not have been able to do some of the things that we did were it not for organizations like Pepsi. PepsiCo, because of Dan, who scraped and scrounged from everywhere, brought in, I think, $90,000 to one of our youth assemblies here during the year of the Arab Spring. And because of that, we were able to bring locally based Egyptian and other Middle Eastern youth activists who were very active during the Arab Spring here to the United States. And without their help, we would not have had that youth voice here. And a young boy came here who had never been to the UN before, but was out in the street and working with Abu Mansour and others, and came to the UN and eventually became the youth envoy, the very first youth envoy to the Secretary General. And we need to thank Pepsi for that, because without Pepsi's support, Ahmed Al-Khandawi would not have been able to come to the UN for the first time. Very, very important. And another young boy came here at that time from the Philippines. His name is Ilak Diaz, and he created a program called 1 Liter of Light for those people who do not have electricity. It was a long story, but he created holes in the roof and put Pepsi bottles and others halfway through the roof, filled them with water and a little chlorine to keep the water clear. And the hot sun of the Philippines would reflect upon the top and reflect down through refraction on the bottom half of the bottle, halfway through the roof, and it created about a 60-watt bulb. And Elok eventually put a balloon around the bottom part and painted it phosphorus, so at night when the sun went down it created a 40-watt bulb. Wow. And he actually created light in homes that have never had electricity. And Pepsi learned about this through the Youth Assembly, and I believe he was awarded with like $1 million grant.
Yeah, it was the Zayed Prize. I think he won the Zayed Prize.
And this is, it's changed his life immensely, and it's enabled him to go throughout the world to people who do not have electricity and provide them with this first step, which is light. And you can't imagine what it's like, but if you go onto 1 Liter of Light online, there's this wonderful video, and this old woman who has never seen the back of her home. But we would not have done that without the Youth Assembly, yes, but the Youth Assembly was just talking about UN policy without the public-private partnership with Pepsi. So with that, I'd like to turn it all back to the moderator, and then actually just to straight ahead introduce Dan and your wonderful PowerPoint. Dan?
Thank you, Patrick, and thanks everyone for this opportunity. Just a note about the Liter of Light. So one of the things that I think corporations are good at is replicating and scaling things. And in that specific example, Ilak was really good at doing that within the Philippines. And when he came to PepsiCo, he said, can you help me scale this? And it's now in Egypt, it's in the favelas in Brazil, it's in Colombia. So we were able to replicate that program into other countries, and you obviously help scale the impact. But just really quickly, 34 years with PepsiCo, never ever expected to work for a food and beverage company ever. Much less did I expect to stay there for 3 decades of my life. But I left there 4 months ago, and during that tenure, I had the really remarkable pleasure of interacting with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of universities, and a lot of government organizations. So I sit in what I believe is a little bit of a unique position, and that I really can see multiple sides of this partnership issue. And just a second about the photo that you see on the screen, because it's guiding in a way. I took that from a very small plane as we were flying through a storm and emerging from the storm. And when my knuckles stopped getting white and I was able to release the seat handles, I took the photo. And I thought this was really telling, because I'm an optimist at heart, and I always think there's kind of light at the end of a tunnel, or I think there's light emerging from a storm. Lord knows, with the intractable challenges we face today, we need that light. So with that, I want to ask one question. What's the single most important thing for partnerships to be successful? Whether it's a partnership with your spouse, a partnership with a government, a partnership with a charity, what is it?
Trust.
One word.
Trust.
Beautiful. And you didn't even see the presentation. Wow, I took a gamble on that one. Trust, absolutely. And one of the things that I hope to do with this presentation is just calibrate us a little bit, so that when we do get to the dialogue today and tomorrow, we're sort of speaking from some of the same planes, not always, but some. There's an organization called Edelman that does what's called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And they've been doing this now for 18 years. They've incorporated something like 30,000 people over those 18 years. And all they do is look at trust. And they track the trust across the world, across countries, and across different organizations. And the bad news is, it's a world of distrust. I don't think that's news to anybody, right? It has been for quite a few years. When you see the green part of this slide, those are countries that are more in a distrust environment than a trust or a neutral environment. So clearly we have some opportunities there. When you further dissect that information, and they talk about sectors, NGOs, business, government, and media, in the 28 countries that Edelman studied, NGOs are distrusted in 10 of those 28, business 16 of those 28, governments 21 of those 28, and the winner, and I say that horribly, is media. 22 of the 28 countries surveyed distrust media. And I'm sure we understand that, and I'm sure we can understand why, and we come up with all sorts of reasons. But the fact is that this conference is hosted by the Department of Public Information. I think there's a really important message there, as there are for the other groups as well. Remember the light at the end of the tunnel, right? You never go to your boss with a problem unless you at least have given some thought to a solution. Well, the Edelman people say that there are mandates, there are ways in which those sectors can help build that trust. And this comes from those 30,000 people that they surveyed, and then they congealed those answers. So when you look at things like business, safeguarding privacy, driving economic prosperity, that's a big one. Not only for Edelman, but for multiple studies. People look at business as driving prosperity. Media, guarding information quality, educating, informing, entertaining, and safeguarding privacy. Governments, again, driving economic prosperity, investigating corruption, as the ambassador started this session with, supporting the poor, absolutely critical. And then NGOs, supporting the poor, calling out abuses of power, and creating a sense of community. And with 3 of those 4, business, NGOs, and government, you can see a common theme around supporting the poor and driving economic prosperity. So common goals is really important to successful partnerships. One of the best ways in which you can drive economic prosperity, as we sit here in the United Nations headquarters, are 17 things called the Sustainable Development Goals, right? And there was a report that suggests that those SDGs open up $12 trillion a year in business value and will create 380 million more jobs. What better way to drive economic prosperity and assist the poor than doing things like that? Critical that everyone, not only NGOs and governments, but the private sector as well, embrace the SDGs and substantively help meet them. Trust is important, common goals, and not only the SDGs. Let's look a little bit more broadly. There was another study, and it was done by GlobeScan and BBMG last year. And they said, you know what, you can really get confused with all of these studies. Let's go back to the human perspective. What do people across the world, 16,000 people in 16 different countries, what do they want out of life? And I can almost guarantee you that the 4 things that come up, I will see head shaking that everyone wants these. You want to be healthy, you want financial security, you don't have to be wealthy financially, but financial security, you want meaningful relationships, and you want a sense of purpose. 4 simple things, right? Obviously the devil is in the detail. The other thing that this study looked at is, if purpose is important to people around the world, what's the role for the private sector in that purpose? And more importantly, how can a company's brands help advance purpose? And let me calibrate you for a second about PepsiCo, because one of the things the ambassador and also that Patrick was saying really resonated with me. How many member states are there in the United Nations? 192, 193, I think, with South Sudan, right? 194. So under 200.
Okay.
PepsiCo serves consumers in over 200 countries and territories. You think about that, right? Over 200 countries and territories. 1.2 billion people every single day eat or drink a PepsiCo product. That's mind-boggling, right? That is remarkable. And that can be really bad, or that can be really good, or it could be somewhere in between, as most things usually are. This study said 65% of consumers across those 16 countries want to support companies that have a strong purpose, either through their products, through their services, through their leadership. The really sad part about that is, when they asked those same people to name a single company that had purpose, only 45% of them could. And there, my friends, is the 20% brand purpose gap. That is a tremendous gap between consumers who want to support companies and who can at least name a company. That is an opportunity for the private sector to fill with the right kinds of partnerships with other partners. And why do companies care? Yeah, there's corporate social responsibility, although I hate that word. I think it needs to be something much more than a responsibility or an obligation. I think it should be embedded. It should be related to conscience. It goes back much more to values than responsibility. Many, many people, and there are multiple studies to corroborate this, are increasingly rewarding companies for good behavior, and conversely, they're punishing companies significantly for bad behavior. 28% of consumers said that they have punished companies for their behavior. Now you think about, as an NGO, imagine losing 30% of your constituency overnight. Imagine losing 30% of your budget overnight. That's pretty dramatic. And that's also dramatic for a company. This is why companies are increasingly starting to care. Brand Purpose in Divided Times is a report, and they came up with, again, 4 simple steps, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, to fill the brand purpose gap. Start with empathy, people at the center. That's part of the consternation, I think, that has developed over the years, and the distrust of companies, is because we sort of forgot that people were at the center, right? It was all about profit, it was exclusively about profit, and it wasn't about broader business value. There's a heck of a lot of other elements besides profit to business value, which companies are starting to become involved with. Defining your North Star, purpose beyond just your products and services, right? What is the greater good? The expectation very clearly is that companies in the private sector are expected to take a stand, a perspective on issues that matter, whether it's climate change or women's rights or human rights or water. Companies, because largely of the influence and the reach and the scale that I mentioned, are expected to get involved. And then, when you think about a marketing company, right, one of the things we did with the Leader of Light was we started a movement. We started a campaign. It was called, actually, #Pepsi Challenge, where every single time someone tweeted #Pepsi Challenge, we donated a portion, it was like 50 cents or something, to a Leader of Light campaign. That's a very relatively simple move for a company to do. It is a life-changing move for an undercapitalized nonprofit. That's a very simple way that partnerships can add value. So that's what to do, but how do you do it, right? It's always simple. I remember there was a comedian, Steve Martin, years ago. He was on TV and he said, I'm going to tell you how to become a millionaire in 3 simple steps, and everybody was eagerly listening. And he said, first, get $1 million. And then he moved on to the other 3. Well, in a lot of ways, this is sort of like this. But the good news is, people that are much more intelligent than I have given this a lot of thought. The Rockefeller Foundation and Business for Social Responsibility recently issued this report, Private Sector Collaboration for Sustainable Development. And in that report, they noticed 5 key success factors for impact, for successful partnerships. At the center, you see a compelling common purpose, you see accountability, you see good governance, with which, the World Development Foundation is absolutely focused on good governance and SDG 17, organization that is designed to be fit for purpose, and the right partners in the right roles. The good news is, it's not just Rockefeller and BSR that are saying this. Just earlier this year, a company that is both a partner in some countries and a competitor in some countries, Unilever, partnered with GlobeScan, and they issued a report representing the views of over 1,000 experts in 39 countries after reviewing and dissecting 125 impactful partnerships. And they saw very similar characteristics for success of those kinds of partnerships. Collective visions, complementary goals, common language, transparency. That's a big one, right? Transparency is not an all or nothing. It's not a black or a white. It is a spectrum, particularly when it comes to the private sector, and it gets back to the risk that the ambassador talked about. There is a tremendous risk for being 100% transparent, and that doesn't happen overnight. But clearly that should be the guiding beacon. And then defined roles, strong project management, and progress and impact measurement. Companies love to measure. You need monitoring and evaluation, right? And it shouldn't just be inputs and outputs. It should evolve from inputs to outputs to legitimate outcomes. Those are the things that really matter. And then finally, this is your chance to voice your opinion, and we hope you'll do it today, and we hope you'll do it tomorrow. You can certainly do it online. Felix Dodds is one of the people, you heard his name mentioned already by Patrick. He is instrumental in this website called the Multi-Stakeholder Processes Charter. And it was introduced last year. It is currently being updated based on the first round of input, and there will be another round and probably many more rounds to come. And the idea here is they're trying to develop voluntary standards which will help drive uniformity in public-private partnerships with multi-stakeholders across the world. So I urge all of you to visit that website, msp-charter.org, to have a look. And I want to end with something that's a little bit wordy, but it's from that same study that I mentioned that took the human perspective. It's going to sound a little bit like, you know, apple pie and motherhood and all of these good things, but I firmly believe, particularly the last paragraph in white, we all feel the same pain. We all want the same things. The challenges we face are more urgent and interconnected than ever. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Now is the moment for corporations to help solve these challenges by designing with humanity at the center. And here's the other rub, right? Remember we talked about profit and expanding business value. This is not about social responsibility. This is about good business. Brands that do this will remain resilient, earn the loyalty of consumers, and lead the way to a new future where businesses, individuals, and society thrive together. With that, thanks so much for your time.
Sorry, we have another workshop coming up.
I have a question. You guys said that there was 4 things that people wanted in life, and I missed number 3. I have health, financial security, purpose.
Oh, you got the sense of purpose?
I got 3 out of the 4.
Okay, let me go back to that
Meaningful
slide.
relationships.
Meaningful relationships.
Right.
All right. So here's some thoughts, and then we'll go to your talk, and then I'll open it up for discussion. You know, as we look at these different civil society, governments, corporate entities, and the cooperation that they all need to be in making a better world for all of us and achieving sustainable development goals, I guess I'm anticipating some questions or remarks. We all can pick out the bad actors. There are companies that are bad actors, there are NGOs that are bad actors, there are governments certainly that are bad actors. But what we need to do are have mechanisms which try to get us to be our best selves, whether it's individually or as NGOs or as corporations or as governments. And I think the UN really does a good job of trying to do that. They do have the Global Compact, which is where companies join the UN and commit to certain principles and certain ideals that are consistent with the United Nations, which I think is very good. Everybody who knows anything about me knows that I'm an LGBT activist, and there is an LGBT Global Compact. One of the things that I talk about all the time is that here in the United States, corporations were far ahead of governments in coming up with same-sex partner benefits, with good working conditions for their LGBT workers. They were way ahead of everybody else. And what this LGBT Compact was, and it's run by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, is to get corporations that are, say, based here in the United States and have these wonderful policies for their employees, to do so when they're also overseas, because they're all multinational companies, and it's harder if you're in a country with bad laws or very oppressive situations. It's hard to take your good practices in a more developed country to a country that doesn't perhaps recognize human rights. I'll turn it over to you, and maybe if you could introduce yourself a bit and tell us a bit about you, because I think we'd like to know.
Okay, so hello everybody.
Come over here, yes. Great.
Thanks, Bruce. Hello, William. So my name is Miroslav Polzer. I'm the Executive Secretary of the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges. It's an NGO based in Austria, accredited to ECOSOC, PPI, UNFCCC, and working with UNESCO and others. And we are a proud partner of the World Development Foundation. And we are working also with UNIDO on how to create models for multi-stakeholder engagement and social entrepreneurship models. And that's the point that I would like to contribute here. Because as you said also in your presentation, what is the precondition for good partnership? One precondition is trust, but the other one is also justice, a balance of give and get. And so here we think that, of course, public-private partnerships are one way to look at these things and make arrangements. But what we are working on is an Agenda 2030 marketplace, which is using the new technologies like blockchain, digital currencies, not only Bitcoin or Ethereum, but really in general these new technologies and Internet of Things technologies, which allow to handle impact better. And one way for us to get young people engaged in sustainable development goals implementation in a meaningful and rewarding way is to create a mechanism which helps to document local level action of young people who act as Agenda 2030 social entrepreneurs, document it, get the action verified, crowd evaluated and reported, and then connecting this digital asset, this value that is given to this SDGs impact, connecting it with corporate social responsibility programs of companies, with philanthropic funding, with the Green Climate Fund funding or carbon tax revenue money. So, and we are convinced that this kind of business, evolving market is huge. There are really hundreds of billions that will be in the future available in this market. And my call here is to people to join hands and to build this information and communication technology infrastructure and to create some kind of Amazon or Alibaba for SDGs impact, so that those people who will contribute to SDGs implementation will get rewards. And as I said, I think this is a big business that's coming, and it's also job creation for youth and everything.
What's the name again?
It's my organization is the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, IAI, but the structure that we are creating is GLOCHA. It stands for Global Challenges Action Network, glocha.org if you put on it's our page.
Thank you very much. Now this is a very interesting field. My husband actually is sitting right over there, Isaac Humphrey. And he has been teaching me about blockchain and Bitcoin. He's very fascinated with all of that, and so I am trying to learn more about it. What he's telling me, and I trust everything my husband tells me, is that there's a lot of more accountability with blockchain. It's very easier, there's more transparency, it's very easy to trace where money goes. And of course, in this world today, a lot of tracing where money goes and where it comes from is a big issue in corruption and that sort of thing. And it seems that blockchain and Bitcoin might provide some solutions to that. So I think it's worth a lot of exploration.
And Bruce, I think so if I could just kind of intervene for one sec, because it's not only about tracing the money, but it's about giving identity to people who were previously nameless. And I think one of the things, so we were active in the UN Global Compact around sustainable agriculture. And there was a guy at the UN that led that Kavan Selvanathon who left and started something called Blue Number. And his whole goal was, as he interacted with thousands of family farmers, smallholder farmers in the developing and emerging world, there was essentially no identity for them that was recognized outside of their farm or their community. And I think the idea of Blue Number in similar situations is to kind of provide that electronic identity in a very safe, secure way. And then all of the benefits obviously that follow on from that.
We do have 2 more speakers, so I'm going to give the microphone over here. If you would introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Eddie, and I'm from World Peace Association. So it's a newly founded NGO registered at New York. So basically, the core purpose of our association is just like our name, World Peace. So basically, what we do is try to promote the importance of world peace and good partnership. So we have been building communication channels between politician leaders and business and also many NGOs. So then we can give each other more understanding and diffuse conflicts. So that's basically what we does. And today it's my great honor to attend this workshop, and I've been I've been informed that I have to give a speech at this workshop, but it seems like more discussion panel. So, but anyway, I've prepared a speech that given by World Peace Association. So.
If we could have an abbreviated form, we only have 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Oh,
which means you have about 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. All right. So the thing, it's a great honor to attend this workshop again, and the things and the topics of this conference are urgently needed for discussion in today's society. From the perspective of reality, we are in a complex and constantly changing world filled with frequent crises. So the huge gap between the rich and the poor, the distrust between countries cannot lead them progress together on the same boat. Turmoil continues in lots of areas, and the international terrorism is still rampant. So the mankind is faced with a serious challenge, whether countries in this world can live in peace and make joint efforts to seek for development and fix our earth. And materialism, hedonism, and egoism have polarized the world and pushed mankind to a dead end. The only way to rescue us is to awaken the intoxicated minds and bring it back to follow the laws of the universe and the human true nature. What is delightful for us to see is that lots of leaders in the world are getting more aware of such situations. So this workshop, I guess, is an effective push for charities and public welfare organizations and much more NGOs to make the earth a better place and to help more people in need. I strongly believe that all the friends here will spare no efforts in contributing your wisdom to help the people in the world break away from the sea of egoism and desire, and to cast off the numbness of ignorant joy, yet with the torture of mind and body.
Thank you.
So, so that's pretty much, and I wish the conference complete success. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, if you would introduce yourself and give some very brief remarks. We want to have some time for questions, please.
好，谢谢。这个尊敬的大会主席，联合国员、各国驻联合国代表团啊，这个很高兴啊，和大家一起啊来探讨那么世界国际品牌建设与发展的相关事宜。实际啊，我准备了很多，但是由于时间关系啊，我想捡重点的几点啊，我简单的讲一下。
Dear Chairman, dear friends, and today I'm very happy to talk with you about...
Can everybody hear him?
Can you hear me?
Use the
Please
mic.
put.
Okay, we can put this in the middle maybe. Yeah. Okay, I would like to talk with you about the international brand development and also the SDGs. And because of the time limited, so I will pick the very important point to share with you.
这个说起来啊，这个品牌很简单，就像1+1等于2，但是实际上世界上没有几个人能真正知道证明1+1等于2。品牌虽然很简单，人人都知道，但是真正懂品牌的，全世界在学界里面没有几个。所以我这个头发也是因为研究品牌而变为的。
Okay, the brand, it sounds is very simple, but it's honest to say, and not so many people, or very, very few people, they really know and understand what is brand. This is why that he said that his hair is become white because he researched a lot about the brand.
这个品牌很重要，那么品牌啊，它是国家、城市、企业的支撑，是经济、文化、社会的基石，是政府的重点监管事务，更是政府经济基础的基础。
The brand is very, very important. The brand is the support of the country, city, and also the company. And this brand is also the foundation of the economic and the culture and also society.
那么这个韦拜斯啊，从2013年至2017年，对国际贸易务实中的商品及多国这个品牌进行了跟踪考察与这个评价，发现啊，多个国家政府对品牌的本质的理解啊存在问题，其中90%的品牌企业对品牌自身的概念存在着误解或者扭曲的现象，所以啊，导致在国际贸易务实中，46.7%的商品存在品质问题，64.9%的国际贸易商品存在着疑似重好或者偷工减料的问题，97%的企业均以国际品牌的名义参与国际贸易。实际上，为什么会造成这个原因？就是我刚才说的，1+1虽然等于2很简单，但是至今没有几个人能真正的证明或者懂得1+1等于2，品牌也是如此。
Okay, the situation of the brand in the international trade and the we buys and did a lot of research from the 2013 to 2017 in the international trade, and we found is many governments and country governments, they have a misunderstanding about the brand. And 90% of the company, they have the misunderstanding about the brand. This is why that is about 46% the product, they have this quality problem. And also there's about 95% and in the international trade product, they have also this kind of problem. And 97% the company, they do the international trade and in name of the international brand. And why this is such problem is because what I just said, and it's not so many people, they really do understand what's the brand. It's like the very simple the mathematics, and 1 + 1 is 2, but there is nobody can prove that.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have. If you have one thing you want to say very quickly.
好的，好。
Quickly.
所以啊，我们有这个小小的建议，那么联合国 NGO 组织能够重视品牌，把世界国的品牌大会能够列入 NGO 或者这个联合国的重要议事日程。谢谢。
So I would like to suggest, and because the brand is very important,
and we hope that United Nations or the NGO, they can put the World Conference on International Brand into the list and can become also the regular event. We can do that here.
Okay, I think we have time. Thank you very much. I think we got 1 or 2 questions. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so my question is about the blockchain and the Bitcoin stuff that you talked about. So you mentioned how blockchain could be used to create a digital identity for practically anybody, but a lot of the benefits of creating a digital identity for everyone has to do with communities that don't have the awareness or the infrastructure to understand what this could do and take advantage of the benefits of having an identity for themselves. So how do you foresee that we can, 1, raise the awareness, and 2, create the infrastructure needed so that they can take advantage of a service like this?
Good question.
Very good question, and therefore we are also working on systemic innovation. So this marketplace that we've mentioned, this technological innovation is one element. And in addition to this, we have institutional innovation. On the one hand, we are building this multi-stakeholder partnership GLOCHA on the global level with the 501c3 organization here in the US. And the other institutional innovation are GLOCHA centers, which should be in every city, in every local community, where young people and anybody contributing to the SDGs with this Agenda 2030 entrepreneurship mindset would get access to internet, access to knowledge, access to technology, and access to resources. So this is one of the elements. And the other thing is raising awareness. We have also our Global Challenges Youth Music Contest. We are asking young people to produce music video clips to sing about their vision of a sustainable world. And we are going in San Francisco in 3 weeks at the California Global Climate Action. We are going to start the next round, and with music and with celebrities engagement, with media engagement, we are working on having this mind shift that people understand that global goals are relevant for everybody and everybody can contribute, and the rest of the partnership will try to provide everything that is necessary to have an enabling ecosystem for this kind of engagement.
Thank you. Yes. Last question.
Oh.
Make it a good one.
Yeah, my name is Rodrigo. I'm a youth delegate for Civic Youth for this conference, and I work with youth in Africa. I can speak up.
Right.
I said my name is Rodrigo. I'm a youth delegate for the UNDPI NGO conference, and I work with youth in Africa. And regarding the presentation about the private-public partnership, I am so much concerned about how those very low-based organizations that work with the local communities can access to that level of partnership to boost their activities.
All right. That's for you, I think. Or maybe you.
You want?
Yeah. You two will talk, and then we'll
So
dive.
I think, so first of all, I would point you to the studies themselves, because obviously this is a summary, but they actually have a lot more granular data for individual countries. So, rather than painting with a broad brush, let's look into the individual study and see if there's anything there that's helpful. But the other thing, the answer is, I think, related to what the gentleman was saying in the previous question, which is engagement at the community level and making the communities part of the process, no matter what it is, whether it's blockchain, whether it's Pepsi citing a new site, whether it's starting some new platform that the community is expected to use. Many times those things are done without the prior consent of the communities, and I think that's the key, is coming up with a way to engage the communities. I'll give you one very specific example. So with human right to water, I don't know, there's a formal human right to water at the UN, and the 5 components are safety, sufficiency, acceptability, accessibility, and affordability. The acceptability component explicitly involves going into the communities that are the most disadvantaged for human right to water and making sure that they have a say in what it is anyone, whether it's the government, whether it's the private sector, whether NGOs, are planning to do to help realize that right. And I think, I mean, from a private sector perspective, that was complete news to us. I mean, we would think that we kind of understood based on, you know, sitting in New York at what countries and communities needed, until you actually go into the communities, make them part of the discussions through their, you know, if it's in India, it's the panchayats, if it's in Ghana, it's the tribal leadership councils, and make sure that they're part of whatever the discussions are, and also part of the education process. I don't know if that helps, but I think that's kind of the general approach I would suggest.
Your last word.
Yes. On young people's perspective, is the National Youth Councils, they usually play that role because they are the umbrella body that interconnects and connects the public sector, private sector, NGOs and media in the country, within also the community as a whole, reaching them at the grassroots level, but as an umbrella of coordinating the National Youth Council, that they will either reach at the regional or international level. That's where we come in. So that's a quick answer. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really great discussion. Please come join us tomorrow at Long Island University, Brooklyn. I hope you're registered, because actually I think we're full, but we've been squeezing people in, so I don't know how that's going to work. But please join us if you can tomorrow, and we will continue this discussion. And have a great conference.